It's time to chill out and get ready for a mediocre Q&A live stream. If you're old enough, grab yourself your favorite adult beverage, and if you're not, stick with apple juice. Put your feet up and relax. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. And now let's cue up the intro music. Yo, what is up? How are you guys doing? Hopefully you guys are doing well. I'm doing pretty good over here. It was a nothing too crazy, just a normal on-call weekend, but luckily I only had to run one call during the weekend, so it wasn't that big of a deal. It was just Sunday afternoon. Kind of got in the middle of a dinner plans that I had with my kids. We were going out to dinner and stuff, but luckily I was able to make it home in time and get onto that, so... But it's good. So hopefully you guys are doing well. Hopefully you and your families are all safe and healthy. And I know everything's so crazy now. I try not to get too involved. Try not to watch the news too much because it's just miserable. It's just crazy. But anyways, hey, here we are. As usual, I got a bunch of stuff I want to talk about. And of course, I want to get to your guys' questions and things you want me to cover too. So I'll definitely try to do it. If you guys don't already know what you want to do, if you guys have questions, you want to put them in the chat and you want to put them in caps lock. That way we try to remember, or that way it helps me to grab the attention and stuff. So my buddy Ike is in here right now. Ike is trying to promote the Discord server right now. Ike, I would love to promote the Discord server, but I do not have the link handy. You can feel free to get it to one of the moderators maybe, and then they can probably post a link to the Discord server. I just don't have access to it, and I'm not smart enough to get it fast enough without ruining this whole stream. But regardless, there is a Discord server that's associated with this channel. To be fair and honest, I'm not on there very often. I haven't been on there in a very long time, to be honest with you, but I know there's a big group of people in there, and they all communicate and stuff. So feel free to check it out. Yeah. And that is it, I guess. I kind of ran out of steam there and lost my train of thought. But I do want to bring up that, as usual, I'm putting more fuel in the fire as to all the craziness that I have going on. And my wife is going to start a little social media venture. It's called HVACR Wife. Currently, right now, she has an Instagram profile, and we're going to work on some other things, too. There'll be possibly a YouTube channel and some other things going on. So if you guys are interested, go over. And the thing about what my wife is doing is my wife's going to try to give perspective on how we deal with things, like with my on-call schedule and stuff like that. So if you guys want to get your significant others to follow her, maybe they can, help her. Maybe she can help them. I don't know. I just feel like as a community, maybe we can make this a little bit easier. HVACR is frustrating and stressful at times. I will say that my wife is very understanding, and I definitely married up with her. But she's grown up with HVAC just like me. Okay, my wife and I started dating when we were in high school. We got married at like 22, and we're both almost 40. Wow, that's quick how that happened. But I mean, that's all she's ever known really is HVAC. So, maybe she can give perspective. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be a good thing or a bad thing, but her social media handle is going to be at HVACR wife, WIFE. So that's the one on Instagram. And then there's a Facebook coming. There's, all the other stuff will be coming too. So please do me a favor and go follow her, give her some support, and encourage your significant others to follow her too. And maybe we can get through this together as a community. So, all right. Now that we got business done, I also want to bring something up. I will bring this up later on in the stream too. Okay. I have an idea in my head. I have actually had this idea for several years, even before I did air conditioning and refrigeration. I mean, even before I did YouTube, I had this idea for a really cool shirt design. I have the concept. It's in my head, right? But I need an artist to draw this concept out. This needs to be a legit artist, someone that really can draw. They need to be able to draw like serious style cartoon images. And obviously I'm not looking to have them do this for free. So this would be something that I would be willing to pay for. If anybody out there knows of any graphic artists or people that legit, I mean, I'm not talking that someone that's drawn a picture of a cow before. I mean, I need someone that can really draw, because I have a really interesting, it's a very intricate idea in my head. I'm almost worried that it's too intricate that you wouldn't be able to put it onto a shirt, but I know that as a kid, I've seen shirts with this style of design on it before, so I know it's possible, just whether or not I can find the right printing company to do so. So if anybody knows anybody, feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com, okay? I'm also potentially looking for some help here and there with the channel and things like that. Someone that has possibly the same artist that can help me with the shirt, someone that has possible graphic design experience. Obviously not looking to hire someone full time or anything like that, but I mean, as like piecework and stuff for sure. So that kind of stuff, maybe some animation help, things like that. Feel free again to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com. And of course I'll talk about it a little bit more and stuff. So, all right. That's a good idea, Alaska. Hire a tattoo artist to do it. That's a really interesting one. Yeah, really, for sure. My wife's name is Jill, Jill. Let me see what else we have going on. Ike, I'm not going to be able to monitor my email right now, dude. I swear I'll shut down this entire stream trying to click on things. I'm an idiot when it comes to social media, so you want to send it to one of the moderators or something. Let's see what else we got in here. Help with the pineapple party schedule. That's right, Alaska. Keep in mind, guys, there's some funny jokes that go on, and it may not have context or be relevant to this channel. But if you guys don't already, trust me, you need to go over and follow the HVAC Overtime YouTube channel. The HVAC Overtime show is a show that I do with my buddies, Bill, Joe, and Adam. Friday evenings about 6:05 p.m. we go live on YouTube, and it's just a tiny bit different than this style of live stream, okay? It's really just the guys just talking, relaxing, hanging out, and it's pretty funny, and there's some really funny inside jokes that are going on too, so you definitely want to go follow that. I'm sure one of the moderators can help by posting a link to the Overtime channel on here too for the guys, so please do that. Yeah, and smash the like button for sure. So demonetized boy, should people try and work on their own HVAC systems? Why or why not? Well, see, air conditioning involves electricity. Electricity can be dangerous, okay? So, of course, there is people that are intuitive and can figure things out, but man, you need to be really careful trying to work on your own air conditioning and refrigeration systems. With that being said, occasionally I work on my own car. Occasionally I'll fix my own home's appliances. Occasionally I'll do electrical work around my house. So, I mean, I have enough knowledge and skills to safely be able to execute those ideas. So you have to be very careful about that kind of stuff. So, I had 2 videos since the last live stream. The videos were, it's not always as simple as the complaint. That was a very complex video that's still not done, by the way. And the frustrating walk-in freezer call, okay? Couple questions below that go along with those. So we'll definitely try to get to those too. I want to look at the chat and see what I'm missing in here. Let's see. What's it like being a celebrity in a very specific industry? I do not consider myself to be a celebrity at all, Chase. I'm just a normal dude. I mean, I appreciate that I have a platform and, I can talk and, people will listen and stuff, but I do not consider myself to be a celebrity at all. And to be fair, like, this is how hard it is for me. It was very awkward, and I didn't mean it in offense or anything like that, but I was in a supply house and some guy that was there recognized me and he said hi to me. And I encourage everybody, if you guys see me out in the wild or whatever, stop and say hello. I mean, obviously don't flag me down on the road, but I mean, if you see me at a supply house or something like that, stop me and say hi. I'm approachable. Just, you have to understand that sometimes I have asshole written on my forehead because I'm a very what do you want to say, I don't know, I'm just very focused when I'm doing things. So you got to get my attention. Hey, Chris, and it's cool. So just do it. But there was a gentleman that stopped me one time asking me for an autograph, and that's a little bit weird for me. So that's only happened one time. And I feel really bad because I told the dude, you don't want my autograph. That's just weird. Like, not my thing. But I don't need that. That's just weird. It's just odd. I never expected any of this to happen. So it's such a trip. But again, that only happened one time. So, well, it is what it is. Let me see what else we got going on here. HVAC overtime is awesome and funny-ish. That's about right, Jason Johnson. It's funny-ish. It's a lot of making fun of my friends is what it is. So, yeah, I have. Jason says I have my butler perform meaningless tasks. That's pretty funny. If you guys are watching this and you don't understand what I'm laughing at and stuff, I'm interacting with the chat. So if you guys are watching this video, you got to pop into the chat and say hey or something like that, because there's a funny conversation typically going on in the live chat too. So does HVAC involve regulated gases? No one should touch it without knowledge. Oh yeah, HVAC does involve regulated gases. Yeah, for sure, Ian. I mean, there's a lot of things about air conditioning and refrigeration that can be dangerous. I mean, you've got combustible gases, you have regulated refrigerants and different things like that, of course, okay? But I mean, you just got to be careful, okay? I don't make DIY videos. I make educational videos for other service technicians, and I fully understand that some people are watching my videos, and I consider those people that are not HVAC techs, but consider those people to be intuitive people, okay? And I can't prevent an intuitive person from trying to figure something out on their own. So if they can watch my videos and figure out how to properly do something, I mean, I purposely leave things out of my videos. So, I don't show step 1 all the way to step 10, this is how you do it. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten emails about how to set my pressure regulators on my torches and all this different stuff. And it's like, that's not things that I can give advice on, because that's where you get into a liability. So you definitely got to be careful about that kind of stuff. So let me cross some things off from my list before I forget as I'm going through things. I already talked about these two right here. So this is an interesting question from Nick. So Nick wanted to know how he can grow his business into the commercial side. He's interested in diving into the commercial work, and he wanted to know if I have any advice on how to get into the commercial side. First and foremost, I want to tell you something, Nick. I do not have experience starting a business from scratch and building my customer base. Okay. So in all fairness, I am not the person to talk to when it comes to actual business advice. I can give you a few tips. Okay. But basically what I would suggest is if you want to get into commercial, okay, obviously knowing people really helps you out a lot, because a lot of these, like what I do is restaurant service. Okay. Restaurant refrigeration and air conditioning. And I work for big corporate chains. And it's damn near impossible to get into a corporate chain because they deal with facilities directors and their emails are unknown. Like, it's rather difficult, okay, without knowing the right people. But what you can do, there is some ways that you can make your foot in the door, and then you got to do the work yourself. Okay, number one, you can become a warranty contractor. Okay, doing warranty work for the manufacturers, the refrigerator manufacturers, the air conditioning manufacturers. Okay, you can start doing their warranty work. And then that will get your foot in the door, but you would be responsible for getting a hold of the customer. You're not working for the customer. You're working on behalf of the warranty companies. Okay, that's one way to get involved in it. There is also networking events. Okay. What I'm going to encourage you to do is, well, actually, yeah, there's networking events that you can get involved in. I believe there's one called, I think it's REFMA. It's the Restaurant Equipment Manufacturers, something along those lines. I believe it's REFMA or something like that. And basically it's where all the facilities directors go. And then you can meet, you can interact with them, you can set up a booth. This is your company. You can show them what you're about, things like that. Obviously getting involved with property managers. Now, some of these things can be frustrating and they're going to be kind of controversial because, you know, there's a stigma about property managers, right? They're notoriously cheap and all this different stuff. Now, not all of them are notoriously cheap, but there's a good portion of them that just want everything for the cheapest as possible. And I mean, is that really a wrong thing for a customer to want everything to be as cheap as possible? No, not necessarily. I mean, they're out looking out for their own interests, right? So they want the best job for the cheapest amount of money. I mean, that's just the way that we work. Okay. But you can get in with property managers. They're always looking for new people. But one of the best pieces of advice I can give anybody, especially starting their business, is don't be the lowest price. Okay. You don't realize how much that is going to hurt you. Too many contractors think that if they're the lowest price, they'll get all the work, and they will. But what's going to happen is they're going to realize they're not making any money. Their employees are going to start wanting raises. They can't afford to give them raises. They're going to want to raise their prices. The customer is going to be unhappy. Like, it just starts a vicious cycle. Okay. So pricing yourself as the cheapest person out there is not the right way to go about business. You need to look at what you need for your business to operate successfully and adjust your pricing accordingly. Okay. So that's one piece of advice I can give you about that. You know, so it's rather difficult though, because a lot of these commercial companies, now if you just want to do commercial air conditioning, it's a little bit easier because you can get in with property managers. You just need to look up property managers in your area, commercial locations, warehouses, different things like that, and just pass a card, do a cold call, knock on someone's door, offer your card, say, hey, I'm a new contractor, I'm looking to get some work, that kind of stuff. Just remember, don't price yourself as the cheapest person out there. Okay. Because you're just hurting yourself and you're hurting the industry too, because you'll realize really quick that you're going to have to raise your prices within a year or so. And you'll realize that entire year of your life, you bent over backwards and you worked your butt off for pennies and you went nowhere. So you got to be very careful about that kind of stuff. Okay. Let me see what else we got going on in here. Let's see. Cleaning coils might be a bit dangerous for any DIY situation. I mean, you know, I don't know if that's in context. I kind of scrolled in here late. So, you know, cleaning coils and stuff, that can even be dangerous too. I understand if it's done right, if power's disconnected, stuff like that. But even still, you can get motors wet. You can get sensitive electrical components wet and different things like that. But an intuitive person definitely could figure out. Scott, HVAC Rookie, thank you so much for that super chat, man. That is amazing. I really appreciate you, bud. Let's see what else in here. Who tops off 410A? Who evacuates and sends a full charge? Joe Corbin. I top off 410A all the time. I have topped off of the 410A is a near azeotropic blend. Okay. There's hardly any glide in it, and fractionization is almost a myth when it comes to 410A. So topping off the charge, in my opinion, is not a big deal at all. Okay. And that said, for a lot of the actual refrigeration blends too, it's actually, they've done a lot of research on those. I deal with 448A, and I've read some research saying it's really not that big of a deal topping off the charge on 448A, and that's even a higher glide one. But I've heard that it's pretty not that big of a deal. You know, but it really just depends on how big the leak is and how much gas you think is out of the system. I mean, if there's only 6 ounces left in there, of course, you know, get rid of that, recover. I mean, vacuum the system down, change the dryers, and recharge for sure. So. Nick's Plumbing, thanks so much for that super sticker, man. That's awesome, but I really appreciate it. Let's see what else we got in here. What am I missing? Just making sure before I start going back to my list. You can't find coupling compressors because of COVID. Dan. So that's an interesting thing. So someone reached out to me. I don't know if it was you, Dan, or if it was someone else. Someone local to me reached out to me because they were curious about a compressor. And so I looked at my local suppliers, the 98 DeVille. Thank you so much for that super sticker. You guys are amazing. All right. I really, really appreciate all this support. It's very humbling. So yeah, I was doing some research. Now, I personally haven't had a hard time getting compressors, the ones that I've had to replace, but I have done some research and I'm starting to notice. Cole Morris, thank you so much. You guys are blowing my mind with these super chats and super stickers. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah, it is starting to get harder and harder to find components. I order a lot of stuff from Parts Town, which is a refrigeration parts distributor. And I'm noticing, man, I've had stuff on order for a long time, you know, from certain manufacturers, and it's just not coming. So it's taken a while for sure. So you definitely want to do your research ahead of time, call all your suppliers, find the best bet. If you have a coupling compressor that you can't find a replacement for, you definitely want to go to the Coupling mobile app and use their cross-reference software within the app, and it'll also help you to cross-reference to a compressor that would potentially work too. So definitely check out the Coupling mobile app. Let's see. I saw a question here. Hold on. What happens in topping off JJ? Does it not mix in? So the theory in topping off the refrigerant charge, if you have a high glide blend, meaning that it's a multi-component refrigerant, there's 3, 4, 5 different refrigerants that make one refrigerant mixture, right? So the theory is that if there's a refrigerant leak, there is potential that the refrigerant that leaks out will be one of the 5 refrigerants that make the total new refrigerant, right? So if you leak out one of the 5 refrigerants, then it's no longer going to be insert name of whatever refrigerant here. So that's the theory behind that, of why you shouldn't top off. So it's really a matter of paying attention to how much refrigerant has leaked out. If you think more than half the charge is leaked out, yeah, I'd probably be considering going ahead and removing that refrigerant and replacing it. But if we're talking, just a small amount of refrigerant or something, then I've done fine, especially with 410A, just topping off the charge. So Al is asking, what would I personally be looking for from a new helper or tradesman in the field? He recently made the jump from residential to commercial. So as a business owner, I just hired an apprentice and he's been working with me for a while. He's doing really good. But what I'm looking for in an apprentice is someone that is teachable. Okay. Someone that is interested in learning, someone that has drive, and someone that I think is not going to go get a DUI tomorrow. Okay. Someone that is going to be here for the long haul. Okay. So this is really big. As a contractor, when I hire an apprentice, I mean, the way that it really works, you want to break it down. For the most part, I really don't make a lot of money off of that apprentice because I'm making an investment into him. I'm giving him knowledge and I'm helping to build him up and I'm paying him, right, to grow him. So I might make a few bucks here and there, but I'm not really making money like I would out of a full-fledged technician. And I'm putting a lot of my time and effort into that apprentice. So I got to make sure that this guy's going to be around, and come a year or two, when he's ready to be a full-fledged service technician, and then he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to go work for someone else. Because I've had that happen. And of course, there's things that I could always do to make that not happen, right? But I'm looking for someone that's just not going to jump ship for $1 an hour, okay? And that's really going to be in it for the long haul. But there's a lot of communication that's involved from both parties to make that happen too. Constantly asking each other, how's things going? How do you feel? How could we improve? That kind of stuff, okay? And I'm looking for an apprentice or a technician that just wants to grow and wants to better himself and wants to do right by the customer, okay? That's what I look for when I'm trying to hire someone new. So hopefully that answers your question for you, bud. Let me see what else we got here. Happy you didn't say anything about crack. Oh, that's funny, Laska. That's funny. All right, you're not an HVAC technician, Kyle, but you could say that you're a bit of an advanced DIYer. You love learning about fixing pretty much anything mechanical, electrical, automotive. Oh, thanks so much, Kyle. That's really awesome, bud. I really appreciate it. Let's see what else we got here. Yeah, definitely. Everybody be safe out in the heat. It was hot today. It was about 100 degrees. That's pretty normal for us. So. Who isn't on their damn phone all day? Oh yeah, that is definitely a really important thing when it comes to a technician or an apprentice, is someone that can actually focus and not be staring at their phone every 5 minutes, for sure. That's really important. let me see what else I got. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get to my list of things to talk about. So we already answered that question. Okay. And then Jason had asked me, he emailed me and asked me about walk-in cooler defrosts. Okay. So Jason, I'm going to go kind of broad with this question and we're going to talk a little bit about it. So Jason's question was, when and if do we need a defrost setup? What kind of setup do we need on a walk-in cooler? And he just kind of wanted me to elaborate about that. So first off, let's simplify this matter, okay? Air conditioning system typically is going to run, you know, and cool the occupied space. You're typically going to maintain 75 degree, somewhere between 70 degrees and 75 degree occupied space, okay? Typically, you're going to have about a 35 degree evaporator TD on most common air conditioners, okay? So if you take that 75 degree return air temperature and you subtract 75, so 7654, so what's that, about a 40-ish, 40 degrees to 50 degree saturation temperature on the evaporator is what you're typically going to see, okay? The point that I'm making here is on an air conditioner, we're talking about the saturated temperature of the refrigerant when it's in the middle of the evaporator. The point that I'm trying to make is that on an air conditioner, for comfort cooling, it's never below freezing, okay? Unless you're dealing with some crazy industrial stuff. It's never going to be below freezing, so you don't need a defrost strategy typically on an air conditioning system. Now, when you step to medium temperature refrigeration, that's when you really need to start thinking about defrost strategies, okay? Federal safety standards say that we have to have our food maintained below 41 degrees for non-frozen food, okay? With that being said, a typical evaporator TD on a walk-in cooler is anywhere from 10 to 20 degrees, depending on the weird setups that they do. And with that being said, the most common is about a 10-degree evaporator TD. Now, the evaporator TD, just to clarify, is the difference between the saturated refrigerant temperature and the occupied space temperature. Okay, so if we're trying to maintain, let's just say a 40-degree walk-in cooler. Typically, we're going to go a little bit lower, but let's just say 40-degree space temperature in the walk-in cooler. Then that means that the saturated temperature of the refrigerant is typically going to be 10 degrees below that, which is about 30 degrees. Okay, that's obviously below freezing. So we have to have some sort of a defrost strategy. Now, if you have a walk-in cooler that is barely ever even entered or exited, you know, and there's not a lot of people going in and out, then you could potentially, Scott, again, thanks so much for that super chat, man. The 98 DeVille, I really appreciate it. Dan Young, you guys are crazy with the super chat challenge. You guys are distracting me, but thank you very much. Laska, you guys, holy moly, thanks, guys. So, I'm getting distracted by you guys. Is that your guys' challenge to distract me here? Because you're doing it. Thank you guys. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. But with the evaporator temperature going below freezing, we obviously are going to start to have frost particles that will freeze and eventually freeze up the evaporator coil. So we have to do some sort of a defrost, okay? Now, again, if you have a box that's not entered and exited very much, they're rarely ever opening in the door, you might be able to get away with doing an off-cycle defrost, meaning that you set the temperature of the space above about 40 degrees. Then when it turns off, theoretically, it should defrost any frost particles that would build up on that evaporator, but it's not very common, okay? The best method is to put some sort of a defrost clock or some sort of a defrost strategy build it into the system, so that way it defrosts it so many times a day. Now, when you get onto a walk-in freezer, it's absolutely critical, because typically on a general walk-in freezer for a restaurant, it's about negative 10 degrees space temperature inside there. That means that your evaporator temperature or your saturated refrigerant temperature is going to be about negative 20. So obviously you're going to need some sort of a defrost strategy on that. Now, on a walk-in cooler, we typically will do an off-cycle air defrost, or just an air defrost, I should say. So a time clock will disconnect the refrigeration and just run the evaporator fan motors. You'll circulate the air from inside the box because, you know, it's above freezing, right? But on a walk-in freezer, you have to have some sort of a electric and or hot gas defrost to try to really get in there and defrost all those ice particles, okay? So Jason, I hope that I answered your question about the defrost, but the biggest thing to remember when you're dealing with walk-in coolers is the saturated temperature of your refrigerant is typically going to be below freezing in that evaporator coil when it's running. So therefore, you got to have some sort of a defrost strategy, okay? if you have a box, again, that's barely ever entered, then you can get away with just an off cycle, the thermostat set at 40 degrees, you know, it moves the air across. But the best bet is always to put a defrost clock on those systems, okay? Let me see what else we got going on inside this chat that I'm missing. Let's see. What do we have? Yeah, smash the thumbs up button, guys. It really does help out the stream. It looks like we have 321 people in here right now and 129 likes. So please smash that button. Get that number closer to the actual views that we have going on. How often do I work on chillers? I actually don't ever work on chillers. I should take that back. I work on a very, very small type of a chiller, but nothing like you're thinking of, okay? I'll work on like power pack beer units, which are tiny little chillers. But it's not even fair to call that a chiller. So no, I don't work on chillers. And I don't work on boilers or anything like that. Am I NATE certified? Would I recommend getting NATE certified? Crazy Dragon Chan. I was NATE certified. I'm pretty sure it expired during the whole COVID shebang debacle, whatever that is. So I haven't renewed my NATE certification. But here's my stance on NATE. ESCO, RSCS certification, any certification is better than no certification, okay? And the cool thing about almost all these industry certifications they have out there, NATE, any of them, is that in order to maintain that certification, you have to continue your education. You have to keep going to school and prove to them that you keep going to school in order to maintain your certification. So of course, as a technician, I'm always going to push everybody out there to get NATE certified or any other trade organization certification. Anything you can do to better yourself. So that way you're forced to continue to educate yourself because this trade is always changing, okay? Now, we're not going to get into the political side. All of them are there to make money, guys, okay? Every one of those certification programs are there to make money in one way or the other. So keep that in mind, okay? Let's see. Let's see what we else go. Would I use an all-purpose cleaner like Simple Green on a coil on the roof? No, Umbroy, because honestly, I'm not smart enough to know the chemical composition of something like Simple Green, and I don't know if it's going to have any adverse reactions with any of the metals on the upstairs equipment. So I'm going to use a coil cleaner that is approved and certified to be used cleaning those coils, and it's actually meant for that purpose. So I would just be very careful about mixing chemicals and using chemicals that you don't know whether or not they're going to have adverse effects. So be very cautious about doing that. Let's see what else. Do I work on any hot gas defrost systems, Cyborg Sheep? It has been a long time. I have in the past, but not enough to give a lot of information about them. But I have done it in the past. The refrigerant charge is critical, obviously, when you have a hot gas defrost system, because you need that refrigerant, that extra refrigerant in the system to be able to do the reverse cycle defrost. So you got to make sure you do that. Let's see what else. Do I ever use RSRs or heat packs? Albert Rodriguez, I'm going to be honest, I don't know what RSCRs or heat packs are, so no, apparently not. There was a question that I wanted to answer, so I covered this one. I'm crossing them off my list right now. Ooh, this is a really good one, okay? So in my recent video, it's not as simple as the complaint. I want to talk about that video because the complaint in that one was that they had a water leak, okay? And that was a very frustrating one, but that was a very... You need to be thorough when we're going out to do these service calls, okay? So the complaint was a water leak. Of course, the management on site didn't know what I was talking about. They didn't know that the call was even put in. We kind of figured everything out towards the end of the day that they were complaining about condensation coming off of the supply vents in the building, okay? But it's not just as simple as saying, hey, let's insulate those supply vents, because we had to look at the entire building as an envelope and say, why are the supply vents sweating? Well, you know, go watch the video and you guys will see. But one of the issues that I had was the hood filters, okay? The hood filters were extremely plugged up, and that was causing some issues. So I got a few people questioning me, why don't I clean the filters and why don't I replace the filters, okay? And the reason why I don't replace the filters, I let the management deal with that, is because I've done it in the past and it turns into a disaster. There's no hood filter out there that's the exact same. They have different sizes. You have to order them correctly. The height and the width needs to be correct. You need to have the grease trough on those filters going vertical, not horizontal. So the filters have to be sized correctly. It's just a pain in the butt for me, and it's too much of a headache. I've eaten too many hood filters because I priced them or I sized them wrong and got the wrong ones, and I couldn't return them because they were custom, and it's just not something I do. Now, as far as cleaning the hood filters, Why don't I do that? It seems easy enough. No, it's not actually, okay? Because you're supposed to clean those filters and clean them in a place where the grease is not going to go down into the storm drains or anything like that. And plus, I don't have time to clean filters, okay? That's not my thing. There's companies out there that professionally clean filters and or you replace them. The customer's perfectly capable of cleaning their own hood filters. It's just not something. I need to stay in my lane and focus on what I know how to do, and I just can't be dealing with all that other stuff. I'm busy enough and go crazy enough just dealing with air conditioning and refrigeration, okay? Peter had asked me a question in the chat, actually, if I like Heatcraft or Trenton. Actually, I think he sent me an email, but he said if I like Heatcraft or Trenton better. All right, so when Heatcraft is a refrigeration manufacturer, Trenton is also a refrigeration manufacturer. Heatcraft is sold at almost every supply house that sells refrigeration equipment. Trenton is exclusively sold at United Refrigeration, okay? I think they're actually owned by United Refrigeration in a weird way on the back end or something, but that's a whole nother topic. But Trenton makes really high quality, nice equipment. I personally don't use it very much, okay? I have used some Trenton stuff and I've been very impressed with it, but I honestly don't use United Refrigeration very much. So I just don't use that stuff, okay? My favorite condensing unit right now is a Russell condensing unit. They make amazing condensing units. As far as the evaporators go, though, I can't say that there's an evaporator out there that I absolutely love, okay? Heatcraft condensing units, I mean, it's all about what you're comfortable working on. I really like the Russell ones because they still come with a standard copper tube and fin condenser, and it's not a microchannel condenser, so I really like that about the Russell ones. So, you know, I'm not going to say that either one is worse or better. There's good things and bad things about all of them, and it's really about what you're comfortable working on. But given the choice between Trenton and Heatcraft, I mean, if someone put a gun to my head and said I had to choose one, I'd probably choose Trenton, to be honest with you, because they just are made really well. And the Heatcraft, they're made well too, but I'm not a fan of the really smart evaporator EEVs and all that fancy stuff. I like just a standard evaporator still. Call me old school, whatever you want to say. So, let me see what else we got. What's my recommendation on fixing leaks? Do I replace a line or do I just solder over it? Late night, I would solder over, braze over something if it has a pinhole leak or something like that. I mean, it really depends on every situation. Is it rotted out? Does it have a lot of corrosion on it? Then it's going to be replaced. But if it's just a leak where something rubbed against it and it's easy, you know, fixable, then yeah, I'd braze on it. It'll be fixed forever. You know, it really depends. Now, is it a cap tube that's leaking? No, I'm not going to braze on a cap tube. I'm going to change the whole cap tube. So, I mean, every situation is different for sure. Chase, thank you so very much for that super chat, man. That is amazing. And your comment says the day you stop learning is the day you know nothing. And that is absolutely true. This trade, there is always something new to learn. Every day something's changing. Technology's evolving, new equipments, new refrigerants. The glide is getting bigger and bigger on these refrigerants, and then they're getting rid of our refrigerants and we're going to natural refrigerant. I mean, every day there's something new. So of course we can always learn for sure. So let me see what else we got in here. How often should the hood be cleaned? That packed up grease is a kill. So restaurant hoods in the restaurant, like for instance, the video that I made where we had dirty hood filters, they used to have a policy that those hood filters were cleaned 2 times a week. They should be pulling them down at least 2 to 3 times a week, soaking them overnight, draining them out. Now, on the flip side, that particular restaurant chain used to be really good about cleaning their filters, and then someone got the bright idea to run the hood filters through the dishwasher, and that actually created a whole nother problem because the grease would be like vaporized almost, and it would get stuck in the dishwasher exhaust ductwork, and the ductwork is not cleanable because it's not meant for grease. It's not meant to ever be serviced or cleaned. So you got to be careful about that too. There's so many different things that you got to worry about. So the best way to clean filters is to soak them in a cleaning solution overnight, rinse them off, let them go down the drain, but you have to make sure that the drain has some sort of a grease trap, okay? You don't want to put them down into a storm drain or something like that because then it goes and clogs up things and all kinds of crap like that. But our restaurants typically have grease traps. So if they flush something down, you know, the drain, then it's going to get stuck in the grease trap before it goes into the sewer. All right, let's see what else we got in here. It would be boring if you knew everything. You love learning every day. That's very true, Nick. Very, very true. So Ryan had a really funny question, but it's actually a pretty smart one. He was curious about water floats for swamp coolers, Ryan. So I know exactly what you were talking about, Ryan. In his email, he said, when you buy these new swamp coolers, they come with the cheapest floats in the world. And that is absolutely true. I have sold swamp coolers to customers that I literally ripped off a bunch of stuff and put on the components that I wanted on. I've literally pulled the crappy ass swamp cooler bearings off and put on pillow block bearings before I even installed the swamp cooler. I've done that before too, just depending on the customer. But as far as the water floats go, yeah, the ones that come with almost every swamp cooler, they're junk. The kind of water floats that I buy, there's not a specific name, but they're the floats that are all brass and they have an adjustable thumb screw on them, so you can actually take them apart and they have mechanical action to them. It's not just one piece that's not serviceable. So those are the ones that I like to buy. They're not very expensive at all, the ones that I buy. That they have a little screw that you can adjust, and then you can adjust the float level and stuff. And keep something in mind when you're dealing with swamp coolers, floats don't last but a year. Okay, as a rebuild on a swamp cooler or an evaporative cooler, when I do a rebuild on it, I'm going to replace the pads. I'm going to replace the pump. It doesn't matter if it's still working. I'm changing the pads, the pump, the water float. We're cleaning the whole thing out. We're going to oil the bearings, grease the bearings, whatever they have, and possibly, depending on the shape of it, change the temperature control if it has one. Okay, and that's going to be an annual thing because floats and everything, they all go bad. They run. They just, trust me, they get worn out. And those water pumps, they're cheap as heck. Change those too. So. All right, let's see what else we got going on in this chat that I'm missing. Do I ever deal with systems running off of a pressure control instead of a thermostat? Yeah, I definitely have, Rocktown. I've made a few videos on them. I've actually done some, I did a podcast with Brian Orr actually on HVAC School talking about using pressure controls as a temperature controller too. And I think I even wrote an article for him over at HVAC School. But yeah, I've worked on it. Coming up in the trade, there was a lot of legacy R12 equipment, and we had a lot of pressure-controlled equipment. So it's something that you do. It's a little time-consuming to properly calibrate a pressure control to control temperature inside the box. And if you guys don't know what we're talking about, think about this concept. You can take a pressure control, and if you have a refrigerator, typically a self-contained refrigerator. It's usually not a remote one, not with these big blends we have today. But on a self-contained refrigerator, if you have a pressure control, you can use that pressure control to control the temperature inside the refrigerator, right? But it gets a little complex when you start having multiple evaporators and things like that. But if it's just a basic system with a single evaporator, condensers no more than, 3-4 feet away, you can control the temperature of that box with a pressure control, because at any given pressure, the refrigerant is a certain temperature, and or at any certain temperature, the refrigerant is a certain pressure. So if you know that by using a pressure temperature chart, I have one on the wall right here, you can look at it and say R22 at 19 degrees Fahrenheit is 42 PSI. Okay, so am I trying to maintain 19-degree temperature inside the box? Okay, that doesn't mean that that's where it's going to be set at, because then you have to start looking at your evaporator TD also. Okay, and that gets a little complex when you're setting that, but it is possible. So yes, I do work on it occasionally. Nick had asked me a question about ice machines, and he's talking about a hotel that needs a very reliable ice machine, and they don't want it to have any downtime. They can't afford downtime on this ice machine. Okay, so first and foremost, Nick, he's asking me what brand, and he gave me 2 brands, Scotsman or Isomatic. The first thing I'm going to say, I've answered this question a bunch of times. What is my favorite ice machine? Well, first off, my favorite ice machine, I work on 2 manufactured ice machines, and I work on them all the time, and I feel like I'm pretty comfortable working on them. A Manitowoc Quiet Cube machine and a Hoshizaki Cuber or Flaker. And my third favorite would be a Fullet Nugget machine, okay? But it's not that those are better than the other machines. It's that I'm comfortable working on the Hoshizaki, the Manitowoc, and the Fullet machine, okay? So it's really about what the contractor that installs the machine is comfortable working on, okay? And what you have available for parts. So I'm not going to badmouth Scotsman or Isomatic. Now, I don't care for those brands, but again, it's because I don't work on them very often, okay? So I'm not super familiar with them. So my suggestion to you would be you need to look at the hotel. How often are they doing preventative maintenance? Okay, on an ice machine with high usage, like in a hotel, that machine is going to need to be cleaned about every 3 months, like legit cleaned. And if they're not cleaning it at least every 3 months, they're going to run into problems. If it's a water-cooled machine, because that happens a lot in hotels, depending on if it's a big one, it might need more, and it's going to have proper water conditioning for the water going in, especially if it's going to be recirculated water, right? Or from a loop or something. Now, if it's going to be dumped down the drain, you still got to worry about cleaning it, but those machines need to be cleaned on a regular basis. Now, specific brand machines, some can do better. For instance, a Hvacr can do a little bit better and go longer, in my opinion, than a Manitowoc when it comes to cleaning. So typically you can get 6 months to a year out of a Hvacr. It might look nasty inside, but for the most part, they still operate. A Manitowoc, not so much, okay? So it really depends on how often the customer is going to have this equipment maintained, how far they're going to go with the maintenance, and that's really going to determine what style of ice machine you need to go with, okay? Hvacr's always done a pretty good job of keeping their sensors and different things like that out of the water area. They have very minimal sensors, a float sensor that's being touched by water on a regular. But the Manitowocs, on the other hand, they have a lot of sensors that are in the water area getting dirty. They have water level probes, they have ice thickness microphones and different things like that. So they require a little bit more TLC than maybe a Hvacr machine, okay? But it really depends on your particular situation. So be very cautious to go in there, and also look at who has the best available parts, okay, when you're out there. So hopefully that answers your question for you, bud. All right, let's get to the chat and see what I'm missing going on in here. If it's a dirty nugget ice machine, would that make a poop nugget? It might actually make a poop nugget. If you've worked on some of the fullet machines, you know, the crazy thing is I used to work on fullets like for probably a 7-year streak all the time for a particular customer that I used to work for a long time ago. And this customer is in the medical industry, okay? The machines were so nasty, and it just blew my mind because, yeah, it just kind of blew my mind. And the stuff that you'd see coming out of those little nuggets of ice would be pretty nasty. Kind of looked like poop nuggets for sure. So, Lewis asks, oh, this is a great question. So in a recent video, actually, no, I didn't say this I haven't shown this video yet. So I'm going to give you guys an example. I talked about this on the overtime show, and I might have kind of teased it or something. So I had a situation, and I explained this on the overtime show, that I was working on an air conditioner, and I walked up to it, and it was flat on refrigerant, okay? So I went and grabbed some, and it was an R22 system. So I went and grabbed some 404A, right, and some nitrogen, because I didn't want to charge the customer for R22 as a trace gas. So I grabbed some 404, put it in there, and then dumped about 200 PSI of nitrogen on top of that 404A to try to help me find the refrigerant leak. But something weird happened when I was doing that, and all of a sudden my pressures were really high, and it kind of tripped me out. Well, come to find out, long story short, the Schraders, they were Cormax fitting style Schraders, were not being depressed on the high side and the low side. Go figure, both of them at the same time. And it made me think that the system was out of gas. But when I started putting the nitrogen, it actually pushed that nitrogen into the system. And the system had the full charge of R22. It was a freak situation, okay? All right. Now, I mentioned that I was able, because when I made the repair to the system, I recovered all the refrigerant. And I didn't want to have to sell the customer new R22. So I came up with a way to remove the nitrogen and the 404 from that R22. Remember, R22 is a pure gas. So what I ended up doing was taking that tank of R22, or the mixed gas, right? Taking the tank, setting it in a bucket, submersing it in water, and letting it sit outside for about 2 hours. I put a compound pressure gauge. Actually, no, I used my digital gauges, but I put my gauge hose on there, and I monitored the saturation temperature of the refrigerant, and I removed refrigerant from that cylinder until my saturation temperature matched the exact temperature of the water. Mind you, it sat in there for hours, you know, equalizing out. So I kept removing refrigerant from the top of the tank, from the vapor, until I hit the exact saturation temperature of R22 at that temperature. So I was able to save that. But I made a comment that I didn't want to have to sell the customer new gas. And someone had asked me, Lewis had asked me, why I would charge the customer if it was my mistake that I put nitrogen on there. And I would have charged the customer if I had to sell them R22. And the reason why is not because I want to thieve the customer or be a punk. It's because it really wasn't my fault, okay? If you work with the CoreMax fittings, you guys know those things suck, all right? And they really are problematic. And that's not my... I mean, yeah, you know, maybe I should have noticed it, but it's not something that I can eat. I can't eat 9 pounds of refrigerant for something because the Schraders were bad. I ended up having to replace them because they were bent out of the way. And when you pulled them out, you can look at them. The little pin on them was bent all the way to the side. So they were definitely bad. And yeah, that's not something I'm going to warranty on the customer. Like, no, that's not my fault. You know, can't lose money like that kind of stuff. So let's see what else we got going on in here if I'm missing anything. Oh, yeah. Distraction hit that thumbs up and answer my email, bro. I will answer your email, Scott. We'll have to do that not on the thing because that's pretty complex on that one. So I'll message you later. I'm doing good, Rick. Thank you very much, man. All right. Let's see. You guys are funny with the ice machine comments. You're making me laugh. Portal to portal pay, overtime calls, start, end at service fitter's driveway. Vlad, thank you so much for that super chat, man. So I don't know if you're asking me or if you're commenting to someone else, what about pay? So the way that my company does it is we pay portal to portal on overtime. So if you leave your house at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to go do an overtime service call and it takes you an hour to get to the job site, we charge that travel time to get back home too. Okay, it's portal to portal. Essentially, the techs are getting paid whatever it took them to get there. They're getting paid to drive home. If it exceeds that amount, then we charge the customer that amount too. Okay. Now, on regular time for our service calls, we charge our customers time and materials, and we charge them travel time to the job. So on a normal service call, our technicians do not get paid to drive home if that's their last service call, okay? But my guys, so let's say their day starts at 7 in the morning and they go to a service call. Well, we charge the customer and my technician gets paid to drive to that service call, then for all their time on the call. Then when they stop with that call, if they have another service call, they charge the customer accordingly, and my technician gets paid to drive to the next call. But then the last call of the day when they have to drive home, no, my technicians do not get paid unless they are on overtime and we're charging the customer overtime. Then they get paid travel time home. Okay, hopefully that it makes sense for you. In a recent video, I took a recovery tank and I dunked it in water while I was recovering, and I had a question as to why I did that. Well, what I'm trying to do is lower the saturation temperature of the refrigerant to try to make it easier for the recovery machine to pump more refrigerant into that cylinder. Okay. If it's really, really hot outside and you have a recovery cylinder sitting on the roof and you're trying to pump 410A and it's 100 degrees, well, your machine's actually going to shut off on high pressure safety before it gets all the refrigerant out of the system, unless you do things to lower the temperature of the refrigerant. You have to be careful about that though, too, because you don't ever want to overfill a recovery cylinder. And something that people need to understand, just because it is a 30-pound recovery cylinder does not mean it can hold 30 pounds of refrigerant. Okay, that is a very common misconception. They can, in every refrigerant has a different, what do you want to call it? I can't think of the right word. But anyways, every refrigerant has a different density. I think that's the right word. So meaning that the amount of refrigerant you can safely put into a 30-pound recovery cylinder is going to change for every refrigerant. Okay, so you have to be careful about that, and you have to know it. My buddy Brian Orr over at HVAC School actually made an app, because you can do this calculation with a piece of paper and a calculator, and you can, a pressure chart, you can figure out how much refrigerant, whatever, insert flavor here. But if you go to Brian Orr's website, hvacrschool.com, he actually has an app you can download for your phone. Just look up HVAC School. And he has a recovery cylinder calculator built into the app where you can just input what refrigerant you're using, what's the highest temperature the tank's going to be at, and what size what's the tear weight of the tank or whatever. And he'll help you calculate with that app how much refrigerant you can safely put into that cylinder. Okay, you have to leave room in that cylinder for expansion, because as the temperature rises or falls, that refrigerant's going to change into a liquid or a vapor. And if there's not enough room, you can have, what do they call it? Is it an electrostatic explosion? There's an explosion that can happen where the tank just ruptures, basically, and it can be very dangerous. So you want to be careful about overfilling cylinders for sure. Let's see what else we got going on in the chat. What am I missing here? What heat blocker do I prefer? You notice I use the solid goop. You've used the spray. Yeah, I don't like the spray because it's messy and it gets everywhere. I use the Refrigeration Technologies wet rag, the Hvacr wet rag. It works really well. The thing you need to understand if you're using a heat blocking compound, even if you're using one of the liquid spray compounds, is it can only absorb the heat until it can't anymore. Okay, so when you put a heat blocking compound on there, though, with a wet rag, it has moisture in it. And once that moisture evaporates, then that compound doesn't do anything more. And it's going to start transferring the heat that it's absorbed back into what you're trying to protect. So whenever you're using any of these, whether it be a spray or the wet rag compound or even a wet towel, right? Just a plain old wet towel, you need to get it off as fast as possible, right? And or get another cool towel on there or something, because again, eventually it's going to stop absorbing heat and it's going to start transferring heat, and then it's just going to defeat the purpose of using any of those compounds. Adam, you're a dork. Why do you give me super chats, Adam? I really appreciate it, but you don't need to do that. And no, I will not stop itching my nose. Okay, I have Coke nose right now. I need the 5 minutes to power. That's right. Paul had asked me, he said, be honest, bro. Is the HVAC business dead after the summer? Yes and no. Okay, the answer to that question is kind of loaded. I do air conditioning and refrigeration. Refrigeration keeps me busy through the winter. Air conditioning keeps me busy through the summer. I live in a mild climate, so we don't have a lot of heating demand out here when it comes to restaurants. So heating, I think I got one heating call last year. That's it during the winter, okay? So we don't get a lot of heating. But if you live in the Midwest, back east, up north, of course, you're going to get a lot of heating calls, okay? So it's all about doing what you're comfortable doing. But I do air conditioning, refrigeration, ice machines, and exhaust fans. So that keeps me busy all year long. And also the fact that I work with restaurants, okay? Because restaurants are always breaking their equipment. But if I did just strictly commercial air conditioning, yeah, it's possible that I would slow down. And I mean, we even still have a little bit of a slowdown in the commercial refrigeration work I do too. But I mean, summertime definitely gets hectic for sure. Chase, thank you so much for that super chat, man. I really appreciate that. You saw me take the goop off in one of the videos. Yeah. Let me see what else we got in here. Do you guys do 5 minutes to power? I don't know what 5 minutes to power is, Vlad. So apparently not. Let me see what else we got in here. Do I know if R11 and 502 are still manufactured? Mark, I don't think they're manufactured in the United States. I don't know about other countries, though. And a lot of people mistake... Oh, R11, I think, might still... I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Was there any damage to the fan motor on the Flying Rats video when the blade was stuck on ice? There was a little bit of damage, but I ended up leaving it in there because I couldn't get one that day, and it's working just fine. So what blends of refrigerant do me and my guys keep on my trucks? Rocktown. So the refrigerants I have in my truck, I carry R22 in my truck. I carry R448A, which is our new medium and low temperature refrigerant that we're using. I carry 404A, 134A, 410A, and R290. And I think that is it. I have a few drums in my office. I have a drum of 409A, a drum of 502, which are very rarely used, a drum of 408A, a drum of Hot Shot. I think I might even still have a drum of MP39, but I don't use any of those anymore. I currently don't use an R22 alternative unless my customers start demanding it, but right now they're still happy with me using R22. It's expensive, but it works, and you don't have to do anything to make it work. So you don't have to complicate anything. You don't have to redo anything. You just put the R22 back in. Burnout Cottonwoods plugged train spine finny with the turbo torch compressor disconnected. So I'm assuming you're saying on a train spine fin condenser, in order to properly clean it when it's impacted with cottonwood, is to use a MAP gas torch. And that is correct. You have to be very careful about it because you don't want to melt the aluminum on the spine fin condenser. But if you ever need to clean a spine fin condenser that is severely impacted with cottonwoods or pollen and different things like that, you can wash it, but most of the time it won't completely come out. And so, you know, your best bet sometimes is to use a torch, but you need to be very careful with that for sure. So let's see what else we got in here. What am I missing? Do I find that my mustache gets itchy? Yes, I do, for sure. Especially when I don't trim my nose hairs. Like right now. Poop sticks and Coke nose. That's right. It's like the Catalina wine mixer over here, dude. Poop sticks and Coke nose. Come on, man. Let's do this. Let's see. New bright blue. Oh, for getting on the spine fin condenser. Yeah, but even still, that stuff won't disintegrate everything. You got to be careful on new bright blue, too, on a spine fin because it will disintegrate the aluminum fin. You know, new bright eats away the aluminum for sure. In my reefer videos, I mentioned refrigeration racks. That's different than supermarket racks. Yeah, I mean, a rack is a rack. Essentially, a rack is a common place for compressors to go. It's a giant rack that you store the compressors in. But on supermarkets, they have giant parallel racks where they have one compressor or multiple compressors on a common suction, common liquid, different things like that. And yeah, so supermarket racks are much more complex than just a very light commercial rack like I deal with, for sure. But a rack is a rack. Train taught us to use a torch to clean spine fin coils. That is correct, Jason. I've heard that and seen that. I've actually seen Train videos from that too. Let's see what else we got in here. What am I missing on this? I already answered that question. Will someone send me a 4-cylinder NAVAC recovery unit? Hint, hint, Andrew. Honestly, I don't think I'm going to see a huge difference between a 4-cylinder recovery unit and my field piece pump because I use large diameter hoses. I mean, I don't know if I'm missing something, but it just doesn't really seem like it makes sense that it's going to be a big difference to me. As long as you use large diameter hoses going into the recovery machine and out of the recovery machine, you put your tank in water or ice. There's no need for a subcooler. It pumps and it moves fast. I use the field piece MR45 recovery machine and it's amazingly fast. So I'd be intrigued to try the NAVAC one, but I just don't see it being that much different than a field piece one. So I'd be intrigued. You're a dork, Bill. You guys don't need to give me super chats. Thank you very much. Starting school this week, any suggestions? Zach, you know, man, just pay attention and research the heck out of everything and ask questions. Hey, I was talking to my daughter yesterday. I am that guy, guys. I imagine that you guys are going to believe what I say when I tell you this. But when I go to any training class, all right, if I go to an ice machine training class, to a RSES class, to anything, do you know where I sit? Right in the front. And do you know that I'm the person that asks the instructor more questions than everybody else in the room? I annoy the instructors, okay? So when you're in school, bud, be that person. Ask questions. You're there to learn. And just because you don't learn the exact way the instructor wants you to is not your fault because everybody learns differently. So it's your job to make sure that instructor teaches you and finds a way to teach you in a way that you can understand. So ask questions. Don't be a jerk about it, but tell him, I don't understand. Can you help me? Can you clarify this? Can you give me extra assignments? Can you, anything you can do to help you to understand things? Get the most that you can get out of school. And the next thing to understand about going to school is you're not going to learn everything out of school. And don't let the school or the instructors brainwash you to think that you're going to start a business fresh out of school either, okay? You need to bust your butt and go work for someone, learn more, and put in your time before you try to start a business. Don't be that guy. There's so many people start their business right out of school, and there's a lot of them that fail. There's some of them, there's a very small percentage that are going to be the ones that succeed, but it's very rare, okay? So just ask a lot of questions, pay attention, and make sure you understand. And if you don't, raise your hand and be that person to keep asking questions until they clarified, until you can completely understand it. That's the best advice I can give to anybody in school. Alaska. That's funny. Thank you guys very much. You guys are amazing me with all these super chats. And yeah, smash the like button, guys. We have 408 people watching right now and 250 likes. Please smash that. All right, I'm going to cover, I mentioned it in the beginning and I'm going to mention it again, okay? So my wife has decided that she wanted to start helping out with the video stuff a little bit more, and she decided that she wanted to make a presence on social media. So she is starting, it started with an Instagram account and it is going to evolve. We are going to do Facebook and YouTube and different things like that. But her handle on Instagram is at HVACRwife, W-I-F-E, at HVACRwife. Do me a favor, go over to Instagram and give her a follow. Stay tuned. The Facebook will be popping up soon. And then stay tuned. The YouTube will be popping up soon. The whole point of what she's trying to do is we want to kind of continue what my wife and I have done. If you guys don't already know, we did a series on this channel called HVACR Life, how we live the HVACR life. And we just discussed a few things on how we have dealt with it as a couple. We're not giving people an advice on how to be like us or anything like that. We're just saying, hey, these are the things that worked for us, and we're sharing those things. So my wife's going to do a better job of making a presence on social media. I encourage all of you guys to encourage your significant others to follow her too. That way they can see, and maybe as a community, we can get through this together, because HVAC is in general a difficult thing, especially when it comes to refrigeration and being on call. Some things like my wife posted about, we went to a party over the weekend and I was on call and we had to take 2 cars. It's uncomfortable. It's a pain in the butt, but I have to do it because I don't want to ruin my wife and my kids' day if I have to go to work, right? So we take a separate car, and it sucks, but it is what it is, I almost didn't make it to dinner on Sunday because, I had promised my kids we were going to take them out, and then I had to go to work. And it's like, oh, but luckily I made it home in time. But anyways, my wife's going to start posting about that stuff. So do me a favor, give her a follow at HVACR wife, HVACRWIFE on Instagram. Okay. And like I said, the other social media platforms will follow soon. Okay. Can I explain the ways in which Trane is against the right to repair? Cyborg Sheep, Trane is not necessarily against right to repair. They're not like Apple. Okay. Apple has proprietary information. They just flat out will not release it. Okay. Trane is not against right to repair. Trane just makes it a little bit more difficult than others to learn, but you can learn, okay? There is a few things that, is rather difficult to get. Trane does have some software that they really only give to their service technicians, their Trane branded service technicians. But in general, you can go to all the training classes. They just cost an arm and a leg to go through Trane. But I mean, you could do it. So it's not that Trane's against right to repair. But they definitely, if you had to name all the different equipment manufacturers, in my opinion, that I deal with, I would say they're the least receptive to, making it easy for service technicians to work on their equipment, if that makes sense. But it's not that they're against right to repair at all. Okay. You can learn stuff with Trane. You just got to pay good money to get trained on their equipment. That's all. All right. Let's see what else we got going on in here. Where's the proper place to put your Hvacr vacuum gauge at? Dan, it really depends on what you're working on. Let's dumb it down and make it as easy as possible. In a perfect world, you're working on a residential system. You're doing a complete evacuation. I'm talking the compressor's open to atmosphere, the evaporator's open to atmosphere. You're evacuating everything, okay? In a perfect world, what I would do in that situation is I would put a single large diameter hose on the liquid line, okay? And then, or the suction line. I mean, I really don't care either way, but I'd probably put it on let's say I put it on the suction line. Then you're going to put the micron gauge on the other line, and you're not going to put another hose on that other line. Now, that's not always practical when you deal with really big systems. The concept I'm trying to prove, though, is if you put one hose on one line, whether it be liquid or suction, okay, and you evacuate the system, the micron gauge goes on the other line that's not being used, because now it's at the other end of the system. The evacuation has to pull all the way through the evaporator, all the way back, or vice versa, all the way through the other way, all the way back, okay? So you want your micron gauge to be on the furthest point in the system away from your vacuum pump. Now, if you're dealing with a big commercial refrigeration walk-in freezer or something, then, you might need to do a 2-hose setup. What I typically will do is I'll start with 2 hoses, right? And then I'll use my valve core removal tool and I'll shut one off, but I have the micron gauge on the process port of that valve core removal tool. So it's still on the other side of it. So once I get my evacuation down to a decent level, usually about 1,500, 2,000 microns, somewhere in there, then I'll close off the other port and start only pulling from one hose, and then you're getting a true evacuation reading on that micron gauge. If you're using a manifold set with a micron gauge built into it, it's not going to be as accurate. There's some things you can do, just like waiting for the decay to happen and stuff, but even still, it's never going to be as accurate as having an actual single individual micron gauge on the system itself, the furthest point away from the vacuum. That's your best bet. Let's see what else we got going on here. Where's the, I already answered that question. What about the time I wake up in the middle of the night and the wife is screaming at a customer that disrespected her because she answered the phone? You've had 2 girlfriends and a wife lose it. That's funny, dude. My wife's never answered my phone in the middle of the night just because she knows I get stupid service calls all the time. But there's things that we all need to do. I mean, being in this trade, we need to communicate. That's one thing I can tell everybody out there. I am not perfect by any means. I'm probably the worst communicator, and that's why I preach it all the time. We need to communicate, okay? You know, we need to let our wives or our significant others know, like, hey, this is what's going on. I'm stressed out because of work. I used to bottle things up. I used to think in my head that I didn't want to bother my wife with all the crazy stuff of work because work was stressful and everything. So I wouldn't tell her anything about work. I'd just come home and be like, yeah, it was a bad day, you know, and then just go about my thing. But I'd be guarded, you know, I'd be holding things in and bottling it up. And for me, again, I'm not giving medical advice whatsoever, but for me, bottling things up, I learned that I explode and things happen, you know. I have anger issues, so I can't bottle things up anymore, and I let everything out. I include my wife in everything. I let her know every bit of stress about my day. I tell her exactly what happened on a service call, how the customer did this stupid thing. Like, I went polar opposite. The pendulum swung the other way, and I share everything with my wife. And my theory behind that is yeah, she may be bored with some of that information, but at least I'm communicating something and not just being a person that's bottling everything up and being quiet. And she's wondering, am I angry at her? That kind of stuff. Okay. So, we kind of cover this stuff in the How We Live the HVACR Life series on my channel. So trust me, go look at my channel, look at the playlists, and you'll see the HVACR Life playlist. There's 5 of those videos that my wife and I did. We talk about an introduction one. We talk about finances. We talk about me being bipolar and having to go see a therapist and all that stuff. We talk about my wife's medical issues because she has some crazy autoimmune disease. It's nuts, and it wreaks havoc on both of us. So, I mean, I think it's important for everybody to know that we're all humans and we all have flaws, and, you know, we're all in this together. And I really think as a community, you and we could communicate, and maybe just sharing the way that I do it might encourage you to find a better way to do something, not necessarily do it my way, but maybe it just lets you know that you're not in this alone, you know. And this trade, it can be difficult. I love this trade. I don't think I could ever do anything different. I absolutely love fixing things, but it does get stressful at times, you know, and it's difficult. This has been a very stressful year coming out of COVID and everything because you know, all the people weren't fixing things, and it's just crazy. It's the busiest. They said it's the hottest July on record ever. Like, it's nuts right now. So it's definitely crazy. Infinite Possibilities, thank you so much for that super chat, man. You are amazing. That is much appreciated. Thank you so much. What does my wife do for a living, Matt? She used to be a waitress at a restaurant, actually, for like 15 years at multiple different restaurants. Now she's a stay-at-home mom. We have pretty much 2 teenagers that are active in school and after-school sports and stuff. So she doesn't work anymore, and she stays at home, and she helps with like the merch deliveries and stuff. Shameless plug. If you guys are interested in purchasing a hat, a shirt, a beanie, a sweater, go to my website, hvacrvideos.com. I shouldn't say shameless plug. That was a shameful plug, but you know, it's my platform, so I can plug it whenever I want. But yeah, that's what my wife does. She handles a lot of the merch stuff and you know, deals with the kids and everything. Guys, I'm not involved. Like, my wife is at my daughter's cheerleading practice right now because I'm doing a live stream. I mean, you know, my kids are normal kids and they have activities, and I'm thankful, so thankful that my wife is understanding. And she lets me do these live streams, you know, because I really should be with my kids, but you know, I like to have a day to myself and do this, and I like talking with you guys and stuff, so it's cool. But I'm super thankful, and I definitely married up with her. But anyways, if you guys want to go follow her, it's at HVACR Wife on Instagram, okay? And like I said, I'll announce everything. There'll be all the other stuff coming soon. If I can convince her to start doing YouTube videos maybe or something too. So average pay for a good, I don't know what a Gore tech is, but a good tech, 10 plus years. It really depends on where you're at and what kind of work you're doing. If you're a 10 plus year service technician doing what I do, restaurant refrigeration and air conditioning, and you really know your stuff, I mean, really, you don't need someone to come babysit you. You actually fix things the right way, the way your service manager wants them fixed and everything, and you're that technician. In my area right now, you could easily make you know, anywhere from 35 to 55 an hour. It just depends. Once you start getting into the above 45 range, you're probably going to start getting into some supervisor position, some sort of a management service supervisor, something like that. But, you know, if you go into commercial, just commercial air conditioning, you're probably in the anywhere from 35 to 50 range. I mean, it really depends. You go to the Midwest, it's going to be totally different. I mean, it really depends. Something I want to cover, I get this question all the time, and I definitely want to talk about this. Union or no union? Okay, guys, I swear I get this question weekly, multiple times, okay? Here's the deal. I have no association with union, but I have nothing against the union, okay? What I'm going to give you as the advice is do what's best for you and your family. If you're in a union strong area and the union is offering you good pay, good benefits, steady work year round, versus a company that's non-union in your area that doesn't offer those benefits, then, I mean, obviously you got to do what's best for you and your own, okay? In my area, the union's not really strong. There is union companies, but you're kind of pigeonholed in the kind of work that you're doing. You're not going to be working in restaurants and stuff like that. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with the union. So I have no problem with union. I have no either way. It's really about what's best for you and your family, okay? So whatever works out best for you, you need to remember that, you know, some of the perks of union companies are really good benefits, really good pay, you know, not crazy hours for the most part, but I mean, some there is, you know, so it just, you need to look at everything as a package. Okay. Look at how often they're laying their employees off, whatever company, union or non, you're going to work for. Ask questions, ask local supply houses. How's this company do? Ask local technicians in the area. You know, find out from them, do your research. But either way, it's really what's best for you and your family. Okay. So remember that. Let's see what else we got in here. Is there such a thing as a vacuum hose that is too big? I mean, I guess in a way, you know, for us though, from the 3/4 hoses to the 1/4 inch hoses, not so much. You have to remember that we're limited by what we're evacuating. So if you're working on an ice machine that has a lot of tiny 1/4 inch lines and capillary tubes and little valves and different things like that, the evacuation is going to be rather hard because you've got to evacuate through a lot of little small spaces. If you're working on a system that just has 3/8 lines going to a 7/8 inch suction line, not very many valves and things, that's going to be a lot easier to evacuate that. But I mean, as far as evacuating too fast, a lot of that has been disproven. I got a book right here. I haven't read this whole thing, but I've read a little bit of it. I would encourage you guys to check this book out. You can get it from TrueTechTools.com. It's called Review of Vacuum for Service Engineers. This was republished by Jim Bergman and Brian Orr, or revised, I should say. And there's a lot of great information about evacuations. They have some of the old information because this book was written in like the 50s or something like that. And then they someone bought the rights and republished it. But this is a great book that explains evacuations. You can get it from TrueTechTools.com. If you use my offer code Big Picture, as of today, you'll get an 8% discount on it. It's just a couple bucks for that book, but I'd highly suggest you guys go to TrueTechTools.com and order that book. It'll open your eyes about evacuation for sure. Thermocouple thermometer better than the Fluke 52. The K-type thermocouple thermometers. Is it better than the Fluke 52? Well, the Fluke 52 has a K-type thermocouple on it, so it's really the same thing. But I do like the Fluke 52 as a K-type thermocouple if I'm going to use it. The important thing to understand if you're working with a K-type thermocouple is that you need to calibrate the meter for that particular thermocouple. Mark them. One, if you're working on the Fluke 52, there's two of them, right? If you mark one with a 1 and one with a 2, and then you calibrate them in ice water, what you're actually doing is you're calibrating the sensor to the meter. And you have to remember that it needs to stay on that port. So if it's on T1 on the Fluke 52, it needs to stay on T1. If you calibrate the meter and then move it over to T2, then it's not going to be accurate. How many tools do I need to fix a refrigerator if it was broken? I mean, there's so many ways it could be broken. That's a really loaded question. It depends. Sometimes you just need a hose to rinse it off, and that might fix it. In fact, today I did a service call where I had a walk-in cooler that was at 50 degrees, and I went over there, and it just simply had a dirty condenser. So all I had to do was get a hose and wash it off, and the thing's running and came down to temp just fine. I didn't need any other tools. So, you know, it really depends. Let's see what else we got in here. Let's see. This video was brought to you by Value Testers. All right. Let's see what else we got in there. Who's the guy in my wedding pic? I don't know who that guy is, man. That is a 22-year-old kid is what that is. That was many moons ago, and I was very young. So let's see what else we got in here. What am I missing here? In my latest video, you know condensation was the main problem, but how do I know the main drain wasn't plugged below the roof? Because the drain would have been overflowing into itself for sure. So let's see what else we got in here. That's everything. Oh, okay. T-Tech is saying he bought that book, The Review of Vacuum, and he said that's everything his father taught him about vacuum as a child. That's great. Was getting the C38 license hard. Honestly, I don't carry the license. I didn't get it. My dad got the license. My dad started this business, and he's about 2 feet out the door. He about to retire yesterday. So I will have to transfer the license or probably get my own or whatever. I can just transfer it, I'm sure. But as far as was it hard to get, I mean, you know, the contractor's license test is a large test with a lot of questions. So you need to have been in the industry for a very long time to be able to understand that or you're going to have to study. So am I worried about having to take the contractor's license test? No, I'm not worried about taking it if I ever had to. Has anyone tried to reach out about my car's extended warranty? Oh my gosh, James. Every day, man, every day. Have you guys seen the funny things? Like there's funny things on Facebook where guys will write that. They'll write that like on the inside of a package unit, or before they set a package unit down, they'll write, I've been trying to reach you about your car's warranty, and then like, you know, or something like that. So that way the next guy that changes the package unit, he has to see that or something like that. Those are pretty funny. Let's see what else we got in here. Let's see. Who's the better tech, Molly or Steve? I don't know, man. Which iteration of Molly? Because hasn't there been multiple Mollys as far as Steve goes? Didn't he have multiple Mollys? I thought he did. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of his videos, but I used to watch him back in the day. We're talking about Steve Lavenmore. Let's see what else. How hard is it? I already answered. How hard is it to get your EPA 608? Not very hard at all. So, where did I get the hat and head cover, and would I sell them? Dino, I don't know if I would ever sell them. I bought my hat from Costco when it was on sale. And then the headscarf that I wear is from like Mission. They sell them at like Lowe's and things like that. It's just a headscarf that you put over your head and get wet, and it just protects you, you know, and helps the evaporation happen. What's the wall-mounted external coil called? Wall-mounted external coil. I don't know what you mean by wall-mounted external coil. If I don't get, you can try to say it in the chat, but I don't know if I'll get to it. You can feel free to send me an email at hvacrvideos@gmail.com, maybe with a picture, and we can talk a little bit more. Does NATE certification hold any weight? Okay, let's be honest. Is NATE certification going to do a whole lot for you? I mean, yes and no. NATE certification is a great certification to have because in order to have it, you have to maintain your education, meaning you have to continue taking classes to maintain your NATE certification. So I encourage everybody to get some sort of a certification, whether it's like some sort of an ESCO certification, a NATE, like HVAC Excellence, a NATE, or the RSES CM exam, something like that. Because in order to maintain those and keep them valid, you have to continue your education. Now, is the NATE certification going to make you a better service technician? Well, I mean, it could potentially, but at the same time, the NATE certification is just a test with questions. If you study hard enough, you can answer the questions without understanding the questions. So does NATE necessarily make you better than someone else? No. Okay. But if you properly use that and really research and understand the questions that you're answering, then it's going to make you a better tech than you were before you had it. Sure. Okay. But I mean, just because you have a certification doesn't mean you're better than the next guy. No. Okay. You know, some companies may require something like NATE to work on, you know, work for them or something. Then sure, that's good. But just understand that just because you get a NATE certification doesn't mean you're the best person in the world. No. So, all right. Let's see what else. What do I do when the drain line on a walk-in evaporator when it's plugged? You just get a water hose and blow it out. I have a special tool that I've made with like a 1/4-inch piece of copper that has a stopper on the end, and you can shove it into the drain. If you can't get to that, then cut the drain line, put a union on it, blow it out with a hose. There's a bunch of different things I've done. Just clear it out. I use water to blow out hoses, drains. Don't use CO2. It's just going to create a problem. Let's see. What am I missing here? Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, guys, I think it's about time that I wrap this up because I'm kind of hungry and my throat's kind of hurting from talking so much. So I really, really appreciate you guys. Are compressors made to have huge inrush currents because they have small winding resistance? That's a good question, bud, and that's a little beyond my technical answering. I'd have to think about that one for a while. So feel free to send me an email to hvacrvideos@gmail.com if I didn't answer your questions or if you need more clarification. I really, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so very much for all the super chats. You guys are very amazing. You help to support this channel. It's so humbling. Remember, stay tuned. My wife's got the new social media platform at HVACRwife. Go subscribe to that or follow her and stay tuned because we'll have some new stuff coming out on that. Again, thank you guys so much for the support. It really, really is appreciated. I will cue up the outro music and cue up the exit screen right now as usual. And we will catch you guys on the next one. So Jonathan Hughes said in the chat right now, I was just watching it. He said that he uses CO2 to clear drains all the time. I'm not saying that CO2 won't work to clear drains, but the problem that I found on walk-in coolers, I've had technicians going clear a drain with CO2 and it doesn't have enough, or it doesn't have the mass that water does, so it's going to go around obstructions. Now sometimes it might, if it's a complete blockage, CO2 would blow it out, but if it's a partial blockage, CO2 doesn't properly clean a drain. So if you have a slow drain and you just use CO2, it might not completely clear it, and the CO2 might go around the obstruction and just come out the other end, versus if you use water and you literally fill up the drain and force everything out of the drain. Water's a much better thing when it comes to clearing drains, and that goes with air conditioning and all that stuff. So if you have like snot buildup or something like that, elephant slime, whatever you want to call it, it might not all be removed with CO2, and that's why I always encourage people to use a water hose with hot water and really flush the entire drain. That way you can really get the water out of the pipe. So that's what I mean by don't use CO2. So all right, I'm going to cue up the outro music again, see what we can do.